Good evening, this is Zach of Verdict Productions. This is segment number 1 of a new series on YouTube called Mormon Sex Scandals and Cover-Ups. I'm here with Darrick Evenson, a former Mormon missionary and apologist, author of The Gainsayers and Black Mormons and the Priesthood Ban. Both books sold in LDS bookstores for about 10 years. Darrick joined the LDS Church in 1979, served a mission in Northern California in the early 1980s, and then wrote a book defending the church against anti-Mormon attacks. However, in 1989, Darrick became inactive and later resigned from the church in the year 1994. In recent years, Darrick has authored several YouTube videos which purport to expose the truth about Mormonism. So Darrick, my first question is, first, you spent years doing research to find pro-Mormon answers to anti-Mormon questions, and you even wrote and published a book defending Mormonism. So please tell me, why did you eventually resign from the church, a church you spent so many years defending?
Okay, Zach. Well, that's easy to answer. I spent tens of thousands of hours researching anti-Mormon claims. The purpose was I was preparing another book because I wrote The Gainsayers, which sold in Mormon bookstores for 10 years, including Deseret bookstores. But I knew that was not sufficient. That wasn't sufficient. So what my plan was to write a book called The Book of Answers to Anti-Mormon Questions. And I would have all anti-Mormon questions spelled out in that book with the answers below. The reason why I was going to write such a book, two reasons. Number one, when I was on a mission in San Jose, San Francisco, California, in the early 1980s, most of the missionaries lost sincere investigators to anti-Mormon propaganda. So I knew that was a huge problem, and that problem was even a lot worse in the Bible Belt. So I knew it was a huge problem for missionaries. So I wanted to solve that problem. And also, I was just curious myself. I wanted to know the truth myself, even though at the time I had a testimony of the church. I was a true believing Mormon, as they say, conservative, Orthodox, true believing Mormon. Yet I still had doubts in my mind,
Right.
and I wanted to know the truth. I was hoping that, of course, 90% of me wanted the church to be true, and I was writing a book in order to help missionaries and members who were having crises of faith, or a faith crisis because of anti-Mormon material. And I wanted to, publish a book for them to help them and help the missionaries who had investigators with anti-Mormon questions. But 10% of me, I was 10% of me, I was a doubter, and I still had doubts about the church and everything because of all the anti-Mormon propaganda.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to find out the truth myself. So that's what I did. I moved to Utah. I did 2 years of intensive study in Utah, looking at anti-Mormon claims, going back to the original sources at the BYU Library Special Collections, the Marriott Library in Salt Lake City, at the University of Utah Special Collections, Utah Historical Library. I just did it. I wanted to see the originals, and so I just went through all these anti-Mormon claims, checking each one, and I found out at the end of my journey that 90% of anti-Mormon claims were true.
Really?
About 10% were false, but about 90% of the anti-Mormon's claims were true. That's based on the research I did, and I did tens of thousands of hours of research, checking the claims, just like an investigator would, who's investigating a murder.
Right.
You got to look at the evidence.
So did you
And
have?
so that's what I did.
Did you have? How did you come to the conclusion that certain things were true? Is my question. Did you have were there multiple sources saying the same thing, or more like corroborating stories?
Yeah, all of that, all of that. I mean, for example, I'll give you one example. Um, when I first ran into anti-Mormon material, I'd only been a member for about 5 or 6 months. And one thing that the anti-Mormons said was that, Brigham Young taught that Adam was God, the father of our spirits, the father of the spirit and body of Jesus, called something called the Adam God doctrine.
Uh-huh.
So, right. So Mormon apologists at the time, and there weren't very, because this was long before the internet, and but I would ask Mormon Institute teachers, Institute of Religion teachers, which are really the only Mormons who are trained in Mormon theology, because Mormon bishops, have no training in Mormon theology or history. So I'd ask Mormon Institute of Religion teachers about Adam God, and most of them would say, "Oh yeah, Brigham Young never taught it. He was just misquoted." And I read a book by a Mormon apostle, Mark E. Peterson, that said that Brigham Young was just misquoted, and he never really taught that. But then I did an intensive amount of research in it, going to the source materials, the Desert Evening News from the 1850s and 60s and 70s, and the Journal of Discourses, which the church still publishes, but most members have never heard of, much less read. So I went to these original sources and found out, yes, Brigham Young did teach the Adam God doctrine. He taught it as a revelation. It was a doctrine of the church for, the entire period he was from when he first taught it in 1852 until his death in 1877. It was an official doctrine of the church. So I would discover things like that. I also discovered that some anti-Mormons were liars. Like Ed Decker of Saints Alive in Jesus, and Walter Martin, so-called Dr. Walter Martin, who wrote The Maze of Mormonism. So it was a mixed bag with anti-Mormons. Some of them were very dishonest men. Others were honest. Most of them were somewhere in between. Anti-Mormon material was like that. Some of it was very dishonest. Like Ed Decker's materials were very dishonest. Walter Martin's materials were often dishonest, but then you had more reliable material out there. The material by Gerald and Sandra Tanner of Utah Lighthouse Ministry was generally honest, but not totally honest, but generally honest. And then you had other men who produced very honest material, so it was a mixed bag. But and some anti-Mormons were just con men who pretended to be Christians in order to make money. Yeah. Like I say, my book, The Gainsayers, was a reply to the Godmakers book and film, which was popular in the early 1980s. And there's a lot of deception in that book, and in the film, especially the Godmakers film, which was very popular back then. But I just found that even though some anti-Mormons do lie, and some of them do lie a lot, like Ed Decker did and Walter Martin did, I just said, okay, I'm just going to look at their claims. What is this claim? Did Brigham Young teach that Adam was the father of our spirits and the father of the spirit of Jesus? Right. Yes. Yeah. The answer I found out is yes, he did. And that was an official church doctrine for the entire, from 1852 until his death in 1877. So I just went down the list of anti-Mormon claims, and either it's either true or false. And so I just went down the list, and I discovered that 90% of anti-Mormon claims are true. So that's what eventually, led me out of the church because of that claim. It wasn't because, since I left the church, Mormons send me emails or respond to my videos that we've made on YouTube saying that you and I are homosexuals and Nazis and, right. All these kind of things, and none of these things are true.
Right.
I'm not. I know you have a child. I can't speak for you, Zach, but I know I'm not gay or bisexual or
Yeah.
Nazi.
Well, nor would it
And
matter. I mean, who has the right to
right,
judge others, you know? And I see
right,
it as you were a person who was actually wanting to ask questions about the church you were a part of, which
right,
is looked down upon in that society because if you're asking questions, that's a sin, you know. And it's a very
yeah,
legitimate reason to leave the church is if you have questions that are not allowed to be answered and you research them on your own to find out the truth, and the truth led you to believing that it was a false church, and that's a perfectly legitimate reason to leave that church. So
right.
for people to be commenting and be upset about that is, in my opinion, is just ludicrous because they just want to be blind followers on faith that they're, you know, they don't want to ask any questions of their own. They just want to blindly follow and believe every single word they're told.
Correct. And you're right. And even if number one, I'm not gay. I'm not bisexual. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a child molester. I'm not a murderer. I'm not any of the things that the Mormons have accused me of. I did not resign. I was never excommunicated. I resigned from the church. I was never threatened. Well, let me put it this way: I was never threatened with a church court because of sin.
Right.
I was once threatened with a church court because I was asking too many questions. That's why I was threatened, because I was asking questions I wasn't supposed to ask. You see?
I see. And if these bishops or counselors or quorum of the 70, quorum of the 12, if they're in direct communication with God, should they not be able to provide you with the answers that you're seeking? You know?
Correct. Yeah, but well, that's the way it is now. Back in the late 70s, early 1980s, when I had all these anti-Mormon questions, I was told just don't worry about it. Just pay your tithing, attend your meetings, and you'll be blessed. Don't ask questions. Don't think. I was told that I was thinking too much. I was told don't think, just obey.
Right.
And I couldn't do that because I'm an analytical type of person. That's just the way I am. I'm an intellectual. I'm not that educated, but I do like that. I am very analytical. So they were telling me don't think about they said, don't think about those questions. Just pay your tithing, do your home teaching, don't even think about it. I couldn't do that, Zach.
Right.
Other people can do that. They could go, okay, and go snap, and suddenly their doubts fly out of their brain, and they don't worry about it again. I couldn't do that. I had to find out if these anti-Mormon claims were true or not. Now, I knew that some of the anti-Mormon professionals were dishonest. This is back in the late 70s, 1980s. I knew that some of them were dishonest, that they were telling lies about Mormonism and Mormons in order to make money from evangelicals. They go to evangelical churches. They would say all these things. Maybe half of it would be true. Maybe 80% of it would be true. Maybe 10% of it would be true, depending on the lecture, depending on the night. And then the evangelicals they'd work them up into a frenzy, and the evangelicals would just take out their wallets and just throw their money at these anti-Mormons. I mean it.
Yeah.
And I was there when it happened. So I knew that maybe not so much today, but certainly in the late 70s and 1980s, the most popular anti-Mormons were the most dishonest ones.
Right.
And like I said, I wrote the Gainsayers book in response to the Godmakers book and film to point out the lies and misrepresentations in those particular anti-Mormon works. So should a person today conclude that, well, because anti-Mormon A is a liar, it must mean the church is true? No, that doesn't follow. You have to look at the evidence. So what I did was, after I wrote the Gainsayers, I moved to Utah. I did tens of thousands of hours of research. What I should have done is gone to college and got married. But anyway, I had to find out the truth about all these claims. I was going to write that book, the Book of Answers to Anti-Mormon Questions. I did tens of thousands of hours of research, and I found one after another. I found that like I say, 90% of those anti-Mormon claims were true. And that's what eventually led me to resigning from the church in 1994.
Okay. And that, I just wanted to bring up on a side note that's one of the things that I appreciate about your work is that you're not part of some other large organized church that's just trying to shoot down another religion, and also for the fact that you're not doing this for monetary gain. You've given me all the rights to the videos even for YouTube. You're not looking for any monetary gain in this. You just want to get the word out there and to expose the truth behind these things. So
yeah, I've been doing this for a while now, and I haven't made a dime on it. I've spent, doing these videos, I don't know, not too much, maybe, I don't know, $1,000 maybe, and you're not making very much money on these, and you spend hundreds of hours working on these YouTube videos. So I'm not making any money, and you're sure not getting rich off of these either. Your time is not hardly, I would say, compensated at all. You're not making much on these, so you're right. No, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because I believe that Mormons, Latter-day Saints, members of the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints, and others have a right to know. That's simply it.
Exactly.
People have a right to know the truth because the church says, believe this and give us 10% of your income and believe in the Book of Mormon, believe this, believe that, obey us, do what we say you need to do, which is fine because the church is a voluntary organization. But people need to know, I feel, is the church being honest with them?
Exactly.
Because the church is saying, you do everything we tell you, and then in return for that, we're going to, give you all these earthly blessings, or God's going to give it to you, and then you're going to be exalted in the celestial kingdom and become a god and create your own worlds and be sealed to your loved ones forever. But you have to do what we say, and you have to pay us your money, and you have to go clean the toilets at the meeting house when we tell you to do so. So people have a right to. They're making an investment of their time and money and belief in an organization. If that organization is true, that's fine. But if that organization is being deceptive, then I think people have a right to know that. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Okay. And I just wanted to bring up a quote that I've learned in the past is that no matter what kind of power it is, power corrupts people, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so you can't tell me that everybody that's high up in the church is in it for just blessings or to help people out. I see them living very, very good lives for themselves as far as money goes.
Yeah.
But that's just on the side there. I just wanted to mention that.
No, I appreciate that. The Mormon leaders, I know a lot of Mormons think that Mormon leaders are basically do this for free, and they don't have any financial gain from the church. That's not true. They all receive a salary from the church. They also receive other perks, which is and what their salary is a secret. Now, why is it their salary is secret? That's also a secret. Why is it a secret? You can't even ask that question. If you ask that question, your bishop will tell you, don't worry about it. Just pay your tithing, attend your meetings, you'll be blessed. And if you ask the question again, the bishop will say, you'll stand before him and he'll say, this is your counsel to you. Counsel means your order, your command. I'm counseling you. When your bishop says I'm counseling you, it means I'm ordering you.
Right.
I'm counseling you to not ask this question again. Do not speak of this again. Will you obey this counsel? Now, counsel means advice, right?
Right. Right.
Will you obey this advice? But in the Mormon Church, of course, counsel means a commandment of God.
Yeah.
So will you obey this counsel? And if you say yes, and then you keep on asking the question, what are the brethren paid? What are their financial benefits to them and their families for being church leaders? If you disobey that counsel to shut up about it, you can be excommunicated, and that has happened before many times. People have been excommunicated for that because they have asked too many questions.
Wow. It just amazes me, obviously they believe that knowledge is an evil thing, stemming from the Garden of Eden event where they partook of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So by us being humans wanting to know things and ask questions and have the knowledge that we seek, that's from the devil.
The church leaders see it this way. You can have questions like, does Heavenly Father love his children? Or is there a modern prophet today? Those questions are good questions. And then there's bad questions, like what are the salaries of top church leaders?
Right.
It's a secret. Why are they keeping it a secret from the members? Why don't they publish that information? Those are bad questions. So if you ask a bad question, it means in their minds you're a bad person.
Right.
That means you're a horrible sinner. You're molesting your daughter, or you're committing adultery, or you're doing something really, really bad. That's why you have a bad question. So that's how they look at it. If you got a bad question, it means you're a bad person and you haven't repented of that badness yet.
Yeah.
That's what they think.
Before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to bring up something that happened to me personally about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I started allowing the Mormon missionaries to come in and kind of give us lessons, even though I had been a member of the church my whole life, but I was just inactive, and me and my girlfriend were just trying to, find some sort of spiritual outlet, and so we were allowing the missionaries to give us talks, and once in a while they'd bring up the fact that we needed to get married, right? And
yes.
Me and my girlfriend we've done a lot of research on our own, and we don't believe in signing contracts and stuff like that. So when we brought that up to the missionaries, they pushed it to the side. They said, well, we're going to bring over one of the ward leaders who will be able to discuss these questions with you further. And so the next lesson, they brought over one of the leaders, and when we asked him the question, without even telling us, they brought us over paperwork. They brought us over contracts for us to sign. They brought us over marriage contracts. The leader did. And we looked at him and we said, he wanted us to sign those right then and there to get married. And we looked at each other and just in kind of shock, and we looked at him and we asked him, okay, so if we have to sign this physical contract with the state of Utah saying that we're going to get married, what does that have to do with the church? Is there not supposed to be a separation of the church and state here? And his response was that, well, this is the law of the land, and that's what God wants you to follow. So for them to be so pushy into us signing a contract to get married, and he also made it really clear that we were following the devil by asking those questions, and that we would not receive any of the Lord's blessings unless we were to sign that contract then and there. And ever since then, we haven't allowed them back.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, let me put it this way: as far as how I feel about Mormonism, I think for a lot of people, Mormonism is a great thing. I think the church can be for a lot of people a wonderful thing. It wasn't for me. and I might explain that later. But for most Mormons who are can be happy in the church and abide by it, and the church teaches a lot of great principles. But I would say, you remember Jesus and the Pharisees. The common people wanted to know what he thought about the Pharisees, and Jesus said, do what they say, but not what they do.
Right.
So that's the way I see Mormon leaders, is because when the Mormon leader says to the members, you need to follow the law of the land, but I know for a fact, in studying Mormon history intensively for 37 years, I know for a fact that anytime Mormon leaders didn't want to follow the law of the land, they didn't follow it.
Exactly.
They didn't follow it. Like in polygamy, and the church says, well, in 1890, the church stopped practicing polygamy. That's not true, Zach.
No.
Church leaders still secretly, and their family members still secretly practice polygamy after 1890 to at least 1904. And there's evidence that some Mormon leaders continued to practice polygamy up until the 1920s.
Wow.
But so you'll see, do what they say, but not what they do. But yeah, that's the example you gave me of Mormon leaders, trying to pressure people into things, pressure people to get baptized, pressure people to do this, pressure people to do that. And then saying, it's a carrot and stick, saying, when I was a young Mormon at 18 years old, when I joined the church, I was a convert to the church at 18. They had me in a prospective elder class with other converts. We were told this, do you want a beautiful woman to take to the temple? Mm-hmm, yeah, we want, yeah. Well, then all you have to do is pay your tithing, attend your meetings, and God's going to send you a beautiful woman to take you to the temple. So, yeah. So in other words, if we couldn't get a beautiful gal, unless we were paid our tithing and attended our meetings, the beautiful woman would just steer clear of us. That's what we were told.
Wow.
And 37 years later, I discover that that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that evil men get beautiful women too, and good men, if they're poor or ugly or a combination of both, they don't get any beautiful women at all. And they can pay 80% tithing and go on 16 missions and attend every meeting and attend the temple every other night. And if they don't have the juju and the bucks and the nice car and the nice smile, they're not getting any beautiful woman to take anywhere.
Exactly.
So yeah, so you're right, Zach. I learned the hard way, just like you did.
All right, so let's move on to the next question here. We're here today to discuss the Bellevue, Washington 8th Ward sex scandal and cover-up, something you yourself personally witnessed. Now, many of our listeners have never been Mormon and won't know what a young adult ward is. Can you tell our listeners what a young adult ward is in the Mormon Church?
Yeah, so a ward simply means congregation. They call their congregations wards, and the church started young adult wards back, I think, in the late 1960s. That take the single people who are between the ages of 18 and 31, take them and put them in their own congregation, which they call a ward, a young adult ward. That's the purpose of that is twofold. Number one is to basically get single people. Hopefully they'll get married. They'll meet each other in the ward and get married. And also, I think the church was having a little trouble at one time with some of the more attractive young girls who were turning 18 were getting looking maybe a little too good to some of the married, elders in the family wards, maybe looking a little too good to them. I think some of those young girls were, looking at some of those married men and saying, he's got a nice house and car. They started looking a little too good to each other. Uh-huh. So they decided, we need to separate these folks, and so there's no more shenanigans here. So I think it's twofold. So that's what a young adult ward is.
Okay.
And so there's young adult wards all over the church. mostly in the Western U.S., but you can find them all over North America and some other countries.
Okay, so during this sex scandal and cover up and part of this Bellevue, Washington 8th Ward, what time period are we talking about here?
This would be from 1987 to 1989.
Okay.
And Bellevue, Washington's right just east of Seattle, Washington.
Okay, so give me a little background on why you were attending this particular young adult ward, the Bellevue, Washington 8th Ward.
Okay, all right. Like I say, I had just gotten back from Utah. I told you I went there to do research for a couple of years, and I did. I got back from Utah, moved back to my parents' place, was thinking about going to school. At this point, I just confirmed that 90% of anti-Mormon claims were true, so I was kind of stuck as far as spiritually. What am I going to do now? Because I had severe doubts about the church, but yet the church for me was still a draw, and emotional draw to me. So it was hard to give up at that point.
Uh-huh.
So I decided to go to a fireside that the Young Adult Ward was hosting. They have firesides on Sunday nights, one Sunday night a month. It's just a speaker comes in, gives some talk, and then afterwards you just mingle and socialize with others. So I went there, and I met a fellow named Larry, who was I was at this time I was 28. So I met or 26. No, I was 26 at the time. I met a fellow named Larry, who had been he was working at Boeing, which is real big up there.
Uh-huh.
This is before Microsoft really Microsoft was still there, but it wasn't big like it is now. Boeing was big, and it's still big. So he was from Tacoma, Washington, where I lived, but because he worked for Boeing, he was living in Bellevue. And he had gone to Brigham Young University. He grew up in the church in Tacoma. He'd gone to Brigham Young University for 6 years, was an electrical engineer working for Boeing, and he came to the ward, and the missionaries introduced him to me because the missionaries knew that I was knowledgeable about things anti-Mormon, because I wrote a book about it, even though the book was not published yet. The missionaries knew I was knowledgeable, so he had some anti-Mormon questions. And I did not want to say to Larry that 90% of anti-Mormon claims are true. Right. I did not tell Larry that. Now you're going to ask me why. My belief at the time was I didn't want to destroy the faith of others.
Right.
Because that was the last thing I wanted to do. I did not want people to leave the Mormon Church. I said, if they were happy in the church, stay in the church. I didn't want to leave the Mormon Church. So, and I wasn't sure I was going to leave it myself, even though I had discovered all these things. I think in the back of my mind, I thought there was still a kernel of truth there I wanted to hang on to.
Okay.
And I'll explain what I mean by that later. But anyway, so he had anti-Mormon questions. I answered them. Boom, boom, boom. He was amazed. Because the missionaries, of course, couldn't answer any of them. Right. The missionaries were not given 1 minute of instruction on how to handle anti-Mormon questions. Nothing. Not a minute. The church just ignored it. So Larry was really enthralled with that, and so he invited me to come to his house, his apartment, speak to him, and I did. We talked for 8 hours straight. And we became friends, and I moved in there to Bellevue, and we started a business project together, a book that I was going to write. We started a project, and he was going to let me stay in Bellevue basically for free, even though I paid for my own food and everything. I was going to write this book. We were going to share the proceeds of the book if it was published. Uh-huh. So he agreed to that. So I got to know Larry really well. I lived with him for probably, I don't know, I gotta think, probably about a year in Bellevue. And I was just shocked by, what I discovered about this guy. I discovered he was a Mormon womanizer. He liked to seduce Mormon women sexually, and then after he seduced them sexually, that was his goal, and then he would just ignore them after that. He'd throw them away.
Right.
And I got to know him quite well because I lived in the same apartment he lived in for about a year, and I would see this happen. Now, and let me tell you his story briefly.
Okay.
He grew up, like I say, he grew up in the church, went to BYU, never went on a mission, went to BYU for 6 years. He married a Miss Utah runner-up, very beautiful woman, also a BYU student.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had a daughter. He was then graduated from BYU. He went to Beaverton, Oregon, to live and work. I think at Intel out there in Beaverton, and they make computer chips.
Mm-hmm.
And make a long story short, he started committing adultery on her many times with her friends and acquaintances, female, married, unmarried, didn't matter. And he also had sex with the 15-year-old babysitter of their child.
Oh, wow.
And the babysitter, talked to his wife about that. And he never told me any of this. I found all this out later, because after I lived with Larry for a year, I moved back to Utah for a summer, and I went to a singles dance, a divorced Mormons dance is basically what it was. And I just happened to meet his ex-wife's best friend, a woman. And we were gotten to talking, she told me about her best friend, what her name was, first name, last name. I said, "You have a picture of her?" "Yeah, I got a picture of her." I said, "That's my ex-roommate's ex-wife." And she told me the whole story about this guy, about the adulteries. And so I didn't know it until then, because every time Larry told me that his wife had done a horrible thing to him. His wife had divorced him, and she was a bitch and a whore, and she this was just such a horrible thing that she did. And every time I'd ask Larry, "Well, why did she divorce you?" He would look away, always look away. He'd look at the ceiling, look at the wall. "I don't know. I have no idea." He'd never look at me in the eye. And so I found out that's fine. He was lying. And the reason why she divorced him, even though she was absolutely gorgeous, like a 10, absolute 10, modelish Miss Utah runner-up. I think she was the second runner-up in a Miss Utah contest, because of all his adulteries. Now, during the time I knew him, I lived with him for about a year. What he would do on a weekly basis is, he was about 33, 34 during this time. He would go to young adult dance. The young adult dance, Mormons have young adult dances where all the young adults in a region go to dance on a Friday or Saturday night. And they play top 40 music to meet each other, singles.
Right.
You go to a young adult dance. He's too old for it. He would anyway. He'd go to a young adult dance, and he'd pick up a Mormon girl at every single dance, and he'd take her back to his place, and he'd tell the girl, "All right, whatever, let's go talk." He would, I guess, I don't know, molest her, you would say, sexually molest her. They would wind up usually having oral sex. I get all this from him. This is what he tells me.
Uh-huh.
Usually, they'd almost always have oral sex, and then he would take her back to her car. She would drive home, give him the number, and then he would move on to the next girl the next week. and he would get a new Mormon girl or girlfriend every single weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, and do the same thing. And I was there working on the computer, a little Mac 2, you know, uh, way back when, working on this book. So I was there all day, and I would get calls from Mormon girls, ages 18, 19, 21, 22. I mean, he's 33, 34 at the time. Is Larry there? No, he works. He's not here. Oh, could you tell him Susie called? Yeah. Please tell him he's not returning my call. Okay. All right. So this would happen every day. I would get from anywhere from 5 to 15 calls a day from girls.
Wow.
Yeah. Every single day. Is Larry called? Where's Larry at? Oh, he's not here. Why hasn't he called me back? I don't know. Did you tell him that Susie called? Yes, you've got your 5 messages right here. I told him. Well, did you tell him? Yeah, I told him each time. Why hasn't he called back? I don't know. You're lying. You didn't give him my message. No, I gave him your message many times. I got this all the time. All the time. And so I could see, it wasn't too long, I could see this guy isn't following the gospel. Right? And so he's starting to confide in me things about these girls. These girls would tell him their big, deep, dark secrets, and Larry would tell me with a smile on his face. Hey, did you know Susie was raped by her dad, when she was 14? Or do you know Susie or Janet? Or they would tell me the big, deep, dark secrets of these girls. And finally, I would say to Larry, I don't want to hear it anymore. He would laugh, and he wouldn't quit. He'd keep on telling me they would confide in him, and he would tell me their confidences, their secrets.
Wait, so these Mormon girls have actually told him about being molested?
On several occasions, yeah.
Wow.
Not all. It's a couple times.
By their own family members. You said their father?
Well, on one occasion, yeah.
Okay, so that just goes to show you that not all Mormon families are picture perfect like they like you to believe.
No, that's not the case. You get, I found out the hard way. Mormons are, you got very good people, very honest, moral people on one end. You have sociopaths, liars, molesters on the other end. You got everything between.
Yep.
Just this, it's Mormonism is a micronism of humanity.
Exactly.
Of course, the church doesn't present Mormons that way. The church presents Mormons as moral, honest, different from everybody else.
Right.
Higher, more moral, more honest, more selfless, and the church certainly presented it that way to me.
Right.
Back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and of course that's not the way it is at all.
Right. Okay. So you've basically been explaining to us what has been happening while you were living with Larry here in Bellevue, Washington.
Yeah.
Just I guess explain to us the rest of what happened over the course of the time you lived with him.
Okay. Well, about 6 months after I moved in, he got a girlfriend, a Catholic gal, she didn't go to church or anything, but she was raised Catholic. 17 years old, very attractive, fit. He was about 33, 34 at the time. She was 17. She moved into his bed. And he was still going to church at the young adult ward every Sunday. He was still going to the young adult dances. He was still picking up young Mormon women at the young adult dances and taking them home to have sex with them. Like I say, almost always oral sex. To have sex with them on his couch in the living room. Wow. And he told his 17-year-old girlfriend to stay upstairs in the bed, not to make any noise, while he had the other girl downstairs on the couch.
Wow.
Yeah, she did this for 6 months.
Wow.
And And during the 6 months, she worked and paid rent.
What?
Yes.
Really?
He didn't pay all the rent, but she paid a third of the rent. And so he made her pay rent. She made him a gorgeous meal every night. Gorgeous meal. Gave him sex. On Sunday morning, he would get up from bed, sleeping with her all night, take a shower, put on his suit, and he'd go to the young adult ward. And at the young adult ward, he would go there. The Mormon girls of the young adult ward, the Bellevue 8th Ward, were crazy about this guy.
Right.
They would shove their phone numbers. They would write their phone numbers on little pieces of paper, and they'd shove it in his pockets. He would come home from church at the Bellevue 8th Ward. He would take out a bunch of papers from his pocket just with the names and phone numbers of Mormon girls.
Wow.
every Sunday.
So it's almost like he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, going to church, pretending to be this upstanding Mormon citizen, and when in reality he was sort of just using it as his own personal dating service.
That's all. I mean, for him, and during this time, we'd get into a lot of conversations about philosophy, life, religion, whatever, and we'd talk about girls, and he would tell me about his sexcapades. Since he was 14 years old, growing up in the Mormon Church in Tacoma, Washington.
Wow.
And they were just and most of the girls he had sex with were active Mormon girls. And he would just tell me one after another, and again, and her, and another, and another. And he told me of all the sex he had at BYU. And over the 6 years. And he, not a lot of vaginal sex.
Right.
Not much of that, but a ton of oral sex. He got at BYU.
Yeah, and that's where I grew up. Sorry to cut in here, but where I grew up in a small town here in Utah, the big thing with the Mormon girls was actually anal sex. To be blunt with it, yeah, because they believed that. I had several friends, and a lot of them had participated in this kind of stuff, and it just goes to show you that Mormon girls are the same as any girls anywhere else in the world.
Yeah. That's I came to, after many years and many tears, I came to discover that myself. That the church presents Mormon women as just bastions of virtue. I can tell you what I was told as a young Mormon convert. I was told that Mormon women never lie. I was told that Mormon women never have sex of any kind before marriage unless forced to by a wicked male, i.e. raped. This is what I was told. And I was told this by more than one person. And I was told that all Mormon women are the same. All they desire in life is to find a worthy priesthood holder to take them to the temple. That's all they wanted. And I discovered through many, and I'm just 18 years old. I didn't know anything about Mormons. I didn't know anything about women, at that age. I hadn't dated by then, never kissed a girl.
Right.
I'm just a young kid, and all these older Mormon men are telling me all these things. How could I not believe it? I thought they knew. I thought they knew what they were talking about.
Right.
So that's what I believed, and it took many years and many observations to find out that that was not the truth. That's not. It just. I remember back in the early 1980s, 1980, I think it was. The Nightline program on TV, on ABC, and the interviewer was interviewing a Russian, not ambassador, I think he was like deputy ambassador in the U.S., I forget what, and they were talking about the gulags in Siberia, where they kept the political prisoners. And the American interviewer was asking him questions. What are these gulags for? Are they for, or what do they keep political prisoners there? And the Russian man was saying, there are no political prisoners in the Soviet Union. There's no crime in the Soviet Union. No, everyone is happy. No, there are no criminals in the Soviet Union. Everyone is happy. There are no. And so finally the interviewer said, hey, we have reports of all these prisons in Siberia. And we have satellite photos of them from our planes that used to fly over there and our satellites. And what are all these prisons for in Siberia? And the Russian says, is this what you do to your political prisoners, to people who criticize the government? You put them in prison? And the Russian guy says, no, those are all criminals. And the interviewer says, I thought you said there's no criminals in Russia, in the Soviet Union. And the Russian guy just, it's like he turns white, he bulges his eyes out, it's like he's in shock, and he doesn't say another word for the interview. And the American interviewer just keeps on asking questions, and he just bulges his eyes out, and he doesn't say another word, because he's caught in a lie.
Yeah.
And so that is a lot like the church in the 1970s, 1980s. They had this propaganda. We're the Mormons. We don't smoke. We don't drink. We don't lie. We don't have sex of any kind before marriage. We're just this. We are chosen people that are so pristine and honest and pure. That's how it was presented to me.
Right.
Some Mormons growing up in Utah said, no, you're lying. They never told you that. Yes, they did.
Yeah.
That's what I was told many times over. That Mormon women never lie. They never have sex of any kind unless raped, forced to by a male. And that, they didn't care about money. They didn't care about status. All they wanted is a worthy priesthood holder taken to the temple. I was told that a million times.
Yeah.
And that was not the truth. So what happened about Larry, and a lot of this truth was revealed to me through Larry's actions, that he was having sex, again, mostly oral sex, with a lot of young Mormon women. During this time, and at the same time of this, he was going to bed and having full sex with his 17-year-old girlfriend. Now, during this time, he was trying to become a chaperone for the youth dances. Now, the church also sponsors dances for Mormon youth from the ages of 13 to 17.
Uh-huh.
And they have to have adult chaperones who kind of make sure the kids don't get in trouble at these dances.
Right.
He was trying to become a chaperone at these youth dances during this time. And I said, Larry, why do you want to do that for? I mean, you can't meet any. I mean, why do you want to do that for? And he said, well, Darrick, if a girl has hair down there, they're old enough for sex.
Oh, wow.
And I said, Larry, girls can get hair down there at 11 or 12 years old. And he'd say, well, then they're old enough for sex.
Wow.
He wanted to become a chaperone at these youth dances because he was getting tired of the sex he was getting from the 18, 19, 20-year-old Mormon girls. He wanted the 13, 14, 15-year-old ones.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, remember, I was told when I was a young Mormon convert, 18, 19 years old, this is what I was told. I was told Mormon girls and women all have the spirit of discernment, that they would not date, much less marry, a man who is in any way unworthy, because they can immediately discern you. So here, I'm seeing Larry, who's committing, not so much fornication, but, having a lot of oral sex with these young Mormon women.
Yeah.
And at the same time, committing fornication with his 17-year-old inactive Catholic girlfriend, still going to church, still still going to the young adult dances, leaving his girlfriend at home while he goes to check out more girls at church or at the young adult dances, trying to become a chaperone at a youth dance because he's taking a fancy to the 13, 14-year-old girls now. So all during this time, the Mormon girls are discerning him, and their discernment was that he was a good, righteous Mormon man. He would become an excellent father and husband who would take them to the temple, and they would live with him forever, happily ever after. That's how they discerned him. Yeah, so that was their spirit of discernment. And at the same time, me, this time I was 27, 28 years old, still a virgin, had never had oral sex of any kind, not given or received, never had sex of any kind. So, if I thought I was living the gospel, I was honest with everyone, honest business, honest with everyone else, but I was poor, and I had a junky car that I took to church, and a lot of the Mormons there in Bellevue 8th Ward, which was an affluent ward, would shun me, and they just, I'd give out my hand, they wouldn't shake it, or they'd shake it quickly and walk on. I was shunned, and I couldn't understand for a long time why I was shunned. And I finally discovered I was shunned because I was poor. Because my suit I wore was cheap, J.C. Penney suit, and my car was junky. And they, behind my back, a lot of the Mormons there referred to me as the loser.
Wow.
And a lot of the women referred to me as the same thing, and a lot of these women at the same time had given Larry, my roommate, oral sex.
Yeah.
down in the living room while Larry's 17-year-old girlfriend was up in his bed. So that's how it came to a point. Eventually I moved out, and eventually I ended my friendship with Larry. What happened at this point was there was a new bishop of the ward called Bishop Kunzler, who was a vice president of Boeing. I went to him and I said to him what Larry was doing with all these young girls. You know what Bishop Kunzler said?
What?
He pretty much called me a liar. I would talk to him, and he would smirk at me and kind of lick his lips and say, "Well, I find that hard to believe."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did Larry not also work for Boeing? Didn't you say?
Right, he worked for Boeing.
So
of course, you must understand that in Bellevue, Washington, probably 1 in 4 people work for Boeing.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if it was part of some sort of protection that the Bishop Kunzler was trying to offer Larry on behalf. I don't know, but.
Well, I think he just didn't believe me. He was a convert to the church. He'd married a Mormon woman when he was in his 30s, and his wife told him that all Mormon girls were just all vestal virgins before marriage, and he believed it. He believed his wife, and that wasn't the case. So the Bishop Kunzler didn't believe me, so I wrote him a letter telling him everything Larry was doing, and I shoved it under his door. And next time I saw him, he had the letter in his hand, and he looked at me like he wanted to kill me.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happened after that? Bishop, he'd been bishop there for, I don't know, maybe a year, not that long. So he said, I don't know what happened, but he was promoted to the High Council, which was which was unheard of just after being a bishop for a year, but that's what happened. So a new bishop came in named Bishop Johnson. Now, by this time, I had ended my friendship with Larry because I didn't like what he was doing to the girls, because he was using them sexually, falling away. And I asked him once, why he did this to these Mormon girls who did nothing to him. And he said, he got mad and he shook his fist in the air and he said, because my wife divorced me. In other words, because his wife divorced him, gave him the right to treat Mormon girls the way he did.
Right.
Can you see the logic in that, Zach, at all?
No, not really, but I can see why someone with an ego like his would think that, yeah.
Yeah, well, he's a narcissist, and that's how they think. Yeah. So, another time he told me, I said, why don't you marry one of these Mormon girls? Because he had five marriage proposals from active Mormon girls that I know of. One of them was 18, and two of them were returned missionaries. And remember, when he got the marriage proposals from these Mormon women, he was sleeping with his 17-year-old Catholic girlfriend every night. Yeah. So my question is where was their discernment?
Exactly.
I was told all Mormon women had discernment, that they would never date, much less marry an unworthy man. And here they're proposing marriage to a man who committed adultery against his wife, who was committing fornication with a 17-year-old Catholic girl, who was having oral sex with all sorts of different Mormon girls he would meet at dances and at church. And also he's trying to become a chaperone to youth dances so he could have sex with 13, 14, 15-year-old Mormon girls. Where was their discernment? Where?
Exactly, yeah.
It wasn't anywhere, so they didn't have any.
So there's another lie that you were able to expose right there, just based off of that experience.
Another Mormon claim that went down the tubes.
Exactly.
And, so many of them did. Just about all of them did.
So I want you to tell me a little bit about Bishop Johnson.
Okay, yeah. Bishop Kunzler was, like I say, promoted to High Council after a year, which was bizarre, but anyway, that's what happened. And Bishop Johnson came in, who was a very good man. By this time, I moved back home. He called me one day. I hadn't met him before this. He called me one day and said, I want to talk to you about Larry. And remember, I was bitter. I didn't want to talk to him because, again, Bishop Kunzler had called me a liar.
Yeah.
So I said, I don't want to talk about it. He says, no, wait. And this is what Bishop Johnson told me. He said, at the first Sunday he was bishop, Mormon girls from the ward would come in, one after the other, into his office and say, Bishop, I have a friend. Larry, did this to her, did sexual things to her. They didn't say with her. It said Larry did sexual things to her, and then, and my friend's upset and wants something to be done about Larry. And Bishop Johnson would say, what's your friend's name? And the girl would say, oh, I can't tell you. I promised I wouldn't mention her name to you, but she wants something done about Larry. And Bishop Johnson said, look, I can't work off of secondhand rumors. I have to have your friend tell me herself. So you tell your friend to come in and see me. Oh, okay, all right. And so then they leave. And then the next girl would come in. Yeah, Bishop, I have a friend. I can't tell you who she is, but Larry did sexual things to her, and she's really upset about it, and she wants you to do something about Larry. What's your friend's name? Oh, I can't say. I promised her I couldn't say. She confided in me. And Bishop Johnson would say, tell your friend to come speak to me because I can't act on secondhand information. It has to come from her. Well, she doesn't want to talk to you about it. She's real embarrassed about it. Well, tell her I don't care. I have to go by the General Handbook of Instructions, which says I can't act on rumors. I have to have a witness
Right.
So tell your friend to come in. And they go, oh, okay. And of course, she'd go out, and the next girl would come in. Yes, Bishop, there's a guy named Larry in the ward, and I have a friend who he molested sexually, and she wants you to do something about Larry. What's your friend's name? Oh, I can't tell you. She told me not to say, and I promised her I wouldn't. And he'd say he went through this every Sunday for 3 Sundays. Girl after girl, this is one word. Girl after girl after girl after girl would come in and tell him this. The same exact story. They had a friend, nameless friend, promised them not to reveal their name, but here's Larry molested them sexually. They want something done. What's your friend's name? Can't tell you. Well, of course, the Bishop Johnson said, well, of course, I believe that these girls were talking about themselves. Can you confirm that or deny it? And so, up to that point, my philosophy was, 11th commandment, that's their business. If a person wants to sin, that's between them and God. That's not my business. At this point, I could see the damage Larry was doing. And he was messing up a lot of people. And there was a young gal that was planning, she was 21, she was planning to go on mission. Larry conned her, in other words, and she canceled her mission. So I could see he was doing damage. So I said, what are the girls' names? And we went down a list, and I said, yeah, that girl dated him. Yeah, that gal there spent the night with him, before he had his present girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that other gal made breakfast, before he started living with his present girl. So he says, okay, well, he says to me, I call a church court on Larry, but I don't have he's not a member of the ward. I don't have his membership. Do you know what ward he's a member of? I go, I thought he was a member of this one. I don't know. I don't know I know his family's in Tacoma. And so he says, okay. And he told me the story. He says, after 3 weeks of these girls coming in, he invited Larry in to talk with him. And he says, Larry, all of these girls saying that you're molesting them sexually. What do you have to say? And Larry said, they're all liars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so Bishop Johnson says, he got up from his desk, he opened his door to his bishop's office, and he motioned Larry to get out. And as soon as Larry got to the door, he says, I never want to see you in this church building again. And he shoved him out the door and he closed the door.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So you know what Larry did at that point?
What?
He went 4.5 miles away to a different young adult ward, and he started there what he had done in the Bellevue 8th ward.
Oh, wow.
Which is it's not raping because the girls were agreeable. He was seducing them.
Yeah.
Sexually.
Right.
He was beguiling them. In other words, Zach, if you go to any college or university in the United States, and you'll find out this statistic that 98% of the reported rapes are never prosecuted. 98% on college campuses. Do you know why?
No, I don't.
Okay, the reason why is that what these Don Juans, what these womanizers do on the college campuses is they seduce lots of women, lots of them.
Uh-huh.
Pretty much anyone they want to, pretty much. And then after they get the sex, they don't call them back, and the girls call them, and they don't return their calls. So a lot of these girls get upset because they thought that this sex, this seduction, was an act of love. They interpret it as, this man loves me, and we're going to have a long-term relationship out of this.
Right.
Where actually, for the guy, it was just a booty call.
Yeah.
Now, for some of the girls, they knew it was just a booty call, and they were just having a booty call, okay? But for most of these girls, this was an act of love and a commitment. This is how they interpreted it. Then, when the guy didn't call them back, they would try to call the guy, and the guy wouldn't return their calls. And this would go on for a couple weeks until they finally realized, hey, this guy doesn't care about me, and he never did. So they go to the college administrator and say, I was raped. And I want something done about this guy because I was raped. Well, they say this, and don't get me wrong, there are legitimate rapes that go on college campuses.
Yeah.
Where guys rape women, they drug them, or they force them to have sex. Okay. I'm not talking about those cases. I'm talking about the cases of beguilement. The women were sexually deceived. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In other words, the guys just wanted sex. The women thought this was the initial act of love that would turn into a long, committed, loving relationship. You see?
Yeah.
So that's what happened. So that's not raped. That's called beguilement, and that's legal in the United States. Yeah. And it used to be illegal, but now it's legal. It's, a guy can say, "I love you. I want to spend my life with you. Oh gosh, we love each other so much. Let's have sex." And the girl says, "Okay," and then he never calls her again. That used to be illegal. It's not anymore.
Wow. I didn't even know that used to be illegal.
It used to be illegal. It's not anymore. So it's what it is not. It is not rape. So that's why 98% of reported rapes are not prosecuted, because not all of them, but a majority of them are actual beguilements. All right. In other words, the woman falls in love with a man, agrees to have sex with him, gives him sex, with the presumption that this is the beginning of a long, loving relationship. Yeah. That's going to turn into marriage, or at least a long, committed relationship. And to the guy is thinking, I'm going to get my knob slopped tonight or whatever. He's not looking for a long-term relationship. He just wants to get some sex. He's there for a booty call, right?
Yeah.
All right. That's what these events were.
Okay.
These active Mormon women saw Larry's car and his clothing, and they fell in love with him. That's why they were shoving their phone numbers in his pocket all the time. That's why they were inviting him over to Sunday dinners all the time. They were in love with him, and so when he started to molest them, and he'd even tell me how he did it. He'd start out, molesting their breasts, and then work down and get them sexually excited, and then he'd unzip, and they would take care of them orally. Most of these girls thought this was an act of love, and they started naming their kids after that.
Wow.
Yeah, and that this was an act of love. This meant they were in love, and he was going to take them to the temple, and they were going to get a house, and they were going to have kids, and they'll be sealed in the temple, and they're going to be together for eternity. This is how most of the Mormon women that he seduced thought.
Right.
Right. This is what. Okay, he's thinking, I just want to get my knob slopped tonight by this girl. Mind you, half the time he was doing this, he had a beautiful 17-year-old girlfriend in his bed upstairs.
Right.
He didn't stop. He didn't stop molesting or seducing the Mormon girls after he got this girlfriend. He just kept right on. Just like when he got married to a former Miss Utah runner-up, he didn't stop having sex with other women. It didn't even slow him down. So anyway, Bishop Johnson decided he was going to call the girls back in, and he confronted each one. He said, I know you're talking about yourself. I know you had sex with Larry. Most of the girls still denied it. 4 of them said, yes, all right, yes, that's what happened. So Bishop Johnson, following what the church told him to do, through the General Handbook of Instructions, which is a book that the church gives to bishops, following the General Handbook of Instructions, he called church courts on these 4 girls in the Bellevue ward.
Uh-huh.
Okay, here's what happened. One of the girls was the daughter of a head counselor who was related to an apostle. Bishop Johnson was fired as bishops.
Really?
And all the church courts on those girls went away after he was fired. He was released after serving 5 months as bishop. That's unheard of. Mormon bishops serve from 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
He was released after 5 months. All the church courts on those 4 women who confessed to him that yes, they had sex with Larry. These were all active girls in the ward. It all went away. Bishop Johnson was released after 5 months. The courts went away, and guess who became the new bishop of the ward?
Who?
Bishop Kunzler came back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, from the high counselor, the one who called me a liar, the one who told about Larry, and Bishop Johnson told me over the phone, did you ever tell Bishop Kunzler what Larry was doing? I said, yes. He said, what did Bishop Kunzler say? He said, he basically called me a liar.
Wow.
He said, okay. I asked Bishop Kunzler if anyone told him what Larry was doing, and he said, no one told him. Bishop Kunzler lied.
Sounds like a lie to me.
He covered it all up, yeah. So what happened in the future? Anyway, Bishop Johnson, the good bishop, the one who was doing simply what he was told to do by the church, he was fired after 5 months. Like I say, one of the girls was the daughter of a high counselor in the stake who was a close relative of one of the Mormon apostles. So I think that's what happened. I think the church did not want that girl to be embarrassed, her family to be embarrassed by a church court. How do you get rid of that? You fire the bishop.
Yeah, so that's not just a cover up at the bishop level by Bishop Kunzler. That's a cover up at a very high level.
Correct. Yeah. So right. Yeah. The only person who could technically fire Bishop Johnson was the stake presidency. So why did the stake presidency fire Bishop Johnson? He was just doing what he was supposed to do.
Exactly.
Well, I think I told you the reason, because one of the girls was a member of a very prominent family related to a Mormon apostle. And what I found out over the years, Zach, is there's one set of rules for rank and file Mormons, and there's a very different set of rules for VIP Mormons. That means apostles, their families, their relatives, the different set of rules completely between the two.
Right.
The rank and file Mormons, you're to be judged by the book. If you commit adultery, fornication, child molestation, for example, you're going to be excommunicated. Yeah. However, if you're related to an apostle, 70, you're in the privileged class, and there's a new set of rules called what I call the unspoken rules. And that means no matter what you do, you never see the inside of a church court. You're just never there. And I've seen many, many more examples of that. For example, I'll give you one more example. I joined the church when I was 18. At the same time I joined the church, this young, attractive blonde girl joined the church. I didn't know her up until then. She was very excited about the church. She was a little bipolar, but very, very excited about the church. Um, the stake president of the time of the Tacoma South Stake had a son who was not Larry. This is a different guy. Son who was a womanizer who used to go around seducing Mormon girls. I saw him once when I was coming out of a church dance having sex with a girl in the back of a car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This was not Larry. This was another guy, son of the stake president of the Tacoma South Stake in the late 1970s, early 1980s. So this blonde girl, this convert, I don't see, after she's a member for about, 6-7 months, I don't see her again. So one time, I'm at, I think, Target or Walmart or Kmart, I can't remember which one, some big store. I see her there, and I say, hey, where'd you go? I haven't seen you at church. And she looks at me just like her mother had died or something, just the expression on her face. She goes, he raped me.
Oh, wow.
I go, who? And she told me, and it was this kid, the son of the stake president. He raped me. I'm never going back there. and so, oh yeah, I said, did you go to police? And she just looked at me like, she was just so broken. So she goes, I gotta go, and she just left. So this is before my mission. I went on my mission to California San Jose mission, 83 to 85. Before my mission, I dated a Mormon gal, a different gal, not this blonde gal I told you about, but a different one who had 3 kids. She was, I think, 25 years old at the time. She had 3 kids. I dated her for 3 months before my mission. We broke up. She'd write me sometimes on my mission. I got a letter from her saying, call me immediately. Now, you're not supposed to call home. I called home. I used the foyer phone in the church to call. And she was very upset. She said that this guy, who was 18, 19 years old at the time, this guy took her on a date, the stake president's son, and raped her.
No, the same guy.
Same guy.
Oh, wow.
I said, she was very upset. I said, well, did you call the police? She goes, no, I don't want to do that. I said, why not? Oh, I just don't want to do that. I said, well, did you talk to the bishop? Because remember, the ward at the time was the Tacoma 10th Ward, which was a young adult ward down in Tacoma, Washington. I said, did you tell had a new bishop? I said, did you tell the bishop? She goes, yes. And I said, what did he say? And the bishop says, well, he doesn't want to excommunicate him because he may not want to come to church again, the kid. Stake president's son. So after I got off my mission, I went back to Tacoma, Washington, and I went to I called up the bishop of the young adult ward, and I said, did you know that so-and-so, the son of the stake president, I've heard from 2 girls so far have confessed to me that he's raped them. And he says, well, I know he has a problem. We're working with him. I said, did you excommunicate him? And he said, no. I said, why not? And he said, well, you must understand, if I excommunicate him, if we excommunicate him, he may not want to come to church again.
Man.
Yeah, just confirmed what my ex-girlfriend had said. And remember, for him to be excommunicated, he would have to appear, since he had the Melchizedek priesthood, to be excommunicated, you have to be excommunicated by the stake presidency and the high council, right?
Right.
And his father was the stake president.
Oh.
Okay. About a month later, I went to church there at the young adult ward, and they were having a missionary farewell. Guess who was going on to a mission to Japan?
Who?
The stake president's son.
Oh,
the rapist. Man. They were sending on a mission to Japan for the church. So I could give you many more examples, Zach. Many more examples, but the point is there's 2 sets of rules: the official rules for the rank and file Mormons, and the unspoken rules for the VIP Mormons. We're not all judged the same.
Right.
And so that's the Bellevue 8th Ward sex scandal and cover-up of 1989.
Okay, so I don't know if you answered this yet or not, but was Larry ever excommunicated, or was that also a part of the cover up?
Uh, well, I found out that Larry and I met once, 25 years afterwards, and we talked. We talked for about 3 hours. And Larry was never excommunicated for anything he did at the W8th Ward. He had many more sexual liaisons with Mormon women. He bragged about it. Many more with active Mormon women. One which led to his excommunicated. I think he was in his early 50s or late 40s. He was finally excommunicated. Today, Larry is married to an active Mormon woman, and he attends the Mormon family ward every Sunday. So that's the story of Larry, and again, this was another incident by this time. Pretty much by this time, like I said, through my research, I had learned that 90% of anti-Mormon claims were true, and I had a lot of experiences like this. I just told you that, by the fruits ye shall know them. That convinced me all was not well in Zion.
Right.
That Mormons were not better than other people as kind of the church presents them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So after this incident, I went inactive, and I stayed inactive until 1994. So when I decided to resign from the church, and that's what I did. I asked for my name to be removed.
Okay. So some listeners will say, well, this was a long time ago. So how would you respond to that?
I would say, human nature hasn't changed in the last 30 years. I would say that one thing I've done the last 30 years is do a lot of research in what is called behavioral psychology, and basically why people do the things they do. And I'm not a psychologist, but I've done a lot of research in it, a lot of study in it. And basically what I've discovered is that there are three types of male: alpha male, beta male, and omega male throughout the mammal kingdom. And human beings are mammals, just like elephants, dogs, walruses were mammals. And when it comes to mating, human females act like all other mammal females. That their first choice for mating is the alpha male, then their next choice is the beta male, and the omega males really at the bottom of the barrel. Women won't mate with a mega male, really, unless they really don't have any other choice, and maybe not even then. So these womanizers that we're talking about, and womanizers exist in all cultures, all religions. I don't know if you ever watched the show Mad Men.
Yeah.
Okay, that was about a womanizer. The women were just constantly married, single, didn't matter, just throwing themselves sexually at this guy, weren't they?
Yeah. Yes, they were.
Yeah. Well, that's you. I will swear to God as my witness that you go to BYU campus, okay, any university, including BYU, or you go to any young adult or singles ward in the church, and you will find one or two alpha males in that young adult ward or singles ward who are basically having sex with every Mormon female in the ward they want to have sex with.
Right.
They are beguiling women left and right. This happens all over the church.
Yeah.
And this happens at BYU. I once, Larry used to talk about all the sex he got. It was mostly oral sex at BYU. And I would say, for Mormon girls, and I would say, Larry, tell me something. Think about it. How many girls slopped your knob at BYU? And he thought about it for a while. You were there for 6 years, and he thought about it for a while. Give me a figure. He goes, oh, that's hard. Let me think about it. And so he goes, he'd say about 300.
Oh, wow.
And I said, you got your knob slapped 300 times? He said, no. He said, I got my knob slapped by 300 girls.
Oh my
at BYU.
gosh! Wow.
All of them active Mormon girls. And like I say, you go to. This is how most women respond to alpha males, because alpha males have a pheromone that drives them wild, makes them want to mate.
Yeah.
Alpha male wolves have the same pheromone. Alpha male chimpanzees have the same pheromone. You've heard of Axe spray?
Yeah.
AXE. Okay, that has a synthetic alpha male pheromone in it. It cost that company $300 million just to produce in the lab that synthetic alpha male pheromone.
Really?
Yes, that's why in the commercials for Axe, you see women, just falling over these guys who use Axe spray because of the alpha male pheromone. So Larry was an alpha male. He was a narcissist. He also had the alpha male pheromone. That's why whenever he got around women, any women, Mormon, non-Mormon, it didn't matter, all these women fell in love with him and wanted to have sex, wanted to mate.
Yeah.
And because these girls were Mormon girls, and because, most of them wanted to, at least the young ones wanted to remain virgins, until marriage. That's why the great majority of the sex was oral sex. Some of the girls had vaginal sex with them, but most of the sex he got from the Mormon girls was oral sex, because they believed that, if this would prove to Larry that they loved him, and this would be the first bond or commitment of their eternal relationship.
Yeah.
This was their thinking. Of course, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
So so this happens everywhere, and Mormon women are no different than any other group of women, other than Mormon women are probably less likely, or I will say this: Mormon women are less likely to have vaginal sex before marriage than the quote-unquote non-Mormon woman would.
Okay.
But he got plenty of sex from plenty of scores and scores and scores of active Mormon women and girls that I knew about, including 5 marriage proposals, 2 of them from returned missionaries. So that's another thing that I realized, that, by their fruits you shall know them, and the fruits I saw weren't that special.
Exactly.
That way.
Okay, so some listeners will probably claim that you're lying about all this and that there was no scandal and Mormon girls would never do the things that you're claiming. So how do you respond to that?
Yes, all this happened just like I just said it did. Will these girls ever come forward and admit to their bishops or husbands, oh yes, I gave Larry oral sex, I was young, foolish, in love. Yes, I knew the sex was wrong, but I was in love, and I thought I had to do it to prove them that. No, they're never going to admit that. You can get them in court. You can get them before Jesus, God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, and have a stack of Bibles 9 miles high and have them swear on it. They'll swear it never happened. Because to admit that is to admit you were fooled, number one. Number two, you're a hypocrite. And, number 3, you're a liar. So how many Mormon girls are going to admit all 3 of those things? The answer is 0.
Right.
They're never going to admit it. And I've been told throughout the years that I've made this all up, and Mormon women would never do anything like that. And what I said was the truth. How you want to handle that's up to you. And I tell people the following. I say, if I tell you the truth and you call me a liar, that doesn't make me a liar. That makes you a fool.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes on that subject there is that the truth does not require that you believe in it.
Very true. Very true. The truth stands on its own. that's what happened. You can deal with that any way you want to.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Many Mormons, once they have read anti-Mormon literature or they've seen anti-Mormon YouTube videos, they lose faith in Joseph Smith and also Jesus and God completely. They become agnostic or even atheists. Is this what happened to you?
Not at all, because I've had many dramatic supernatural experiences before all this has happened that convinced me that the spirit world exists. And I'm not talking about a burning in a bosom or a good feeling I hear after a church talk. I'm talking about I've seen ghosts, I've heard ghosts, I believe I have a guardian angel that saved my life very dramatically on 3 different occasions. So I've had very dramatic experiences that convinced me beyond any shadow of a doubt that the spirit world exists. So it's easy for me to believe in God and angels because I've had very dramatic supernatural experiences. So what happens to most Mormons when they discover that most anti-Mormon claims are true, they become very upset and they lose faith in all religion. They say, well, since Joseph Smith was a fraud, it means that every man and woman who claims to be a prophet is also a fraud. And since the church is not true, it means all churches and religions are not true. I don't think that's logical. I think they're just very hurt people that are very hurt they feel betrayed by God, so they're going to say, okay, God, because you betrayed me, I'm not going to believe you anymore.
Right.
And I couldn't do that because I've had too many supernatural experiences that showed me that the spirit world exists. Now, because I know the spirit world exists, it's not hard for me to believe in God. Even though I've never seen God, but I've seen and had experiences with supernatural beings. Let me put it that way. So anyway, like I say, I've had many supernatural experiences. I am now a Daheshist. I'm a follower of Dr. Dahesh, the miracle working prophet of Lebanon. Dr. Dahesh, it was the most prolific worker of supernatural miracles of all time. He worked thousands of supernatural miracles. There's hundreds of witnesses. Hundreds of witnesses testified what they saw in Lebanese newspapers from the 1930s to the 1970s. I had a very dramatic experience in 2005. Dr. Dahesh moved to New York City in 1975 to get away from the Lebanese Civil War. He stayed in the United States until his death in 1984. In 1975, he came to the U.S. He died in 1984. In 2005, I discovered Dr. Dahesh in a book at a public library. By that time, I was very jaded against organized religion, so I prayed that if Dr. Dahesh was really a miracle worker, that he would appear to me like Jesus appeared to Thomas after his death. And in year 2005, during a lightning storm, Dr. Dahesh came to my home in Lakewood, Washington. That's near Tacoma, Washington. In a very dramatic way, which I talk about in my online book, which is called Falling into the Sun, why I left the Mormon Church and became a Daheshist. So I would like people, if they want to read of that account of when Dr. Dahesh, as a supernatural being, visited me in broad daylight in 2005. Please read my online book. It's free. It's not very long. You could read what happened. You can read all about it there. It has merit. I tell about other accounts of ghosts and the supernatural that I've experienced. So we're going to have that link at the end of this, and please go to the book if you want to know more about that. But right now, I believe in God. I believe God is real. I believe I'm a Daheshist. I follow Dr. Dahesh, the miracle working prophet of Lebanon.
Okay. And so, how do you know that this Dr. Dahesh is not just another Joseph Smith?
Okay, well, I'll give you some examples. I've spoken to people that have witnessed supernatural miracles that Dr. Dahesh performed. Dr. Dahesh never asked for money when he performed his miracles, including his miracles of healing. Dr. Dahesh never married. No woman ever came forward and said, he tried to seduce me or he seduced me. So he didn't go after the wives of other men. Joseph Smith did. He never claimed to translate, ancient plates or parchments. Dr. Dahesh performed his miracles in front of many witnesses. And some of those people are still alive today, and I've spoken with them. Also, Dr. Dahesh visited me in broad daylight in 2005. And if you want to know more about that, read my online booklet, Falling into the Sun, and we'll have that link up later. And it's free, and it doesn't cost you anything. And check it out there.
Okay, great. So have you concluded that Joseph Smith was just a complete fraud?
I used to think that. However, now I'm not. This is what I think now. And I'll tell you what I think. Back in Europe in the 1600s, there was a group of Rosicrucian monks called the Order of Zion. They later changed their name to the Zionitic Brotherhood. And they had a monastery in a place called Mormon in Belgium, which was near the German border with Belgium. It was actually in what was considered Germany at the time, back in the 1600s. And they claimed to be the heirs of the Melchizedek priesthood, but they were Rosicrucians.
Uh-huh.
And some historians believe that the Rosicrucians founded the Freemasonry in England in the I think the 1720s, if I'm not mistaken. So they had an order of Rosicrucian monks. They were being persecuted by the Roman Catholic Church, of course. So they wanted to escape this persecution from the Roman Catholic Church, which was threatening their lives. So they sold their monastery, and they all packed up, and they came to America. And they came over on a ship, and they first settled in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And they first settled in Lehigh Valley, and then they went to a place that was later called Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And they started their little commune. And they built a round temple, and they put an altar right in the middle of it, and they worshiped in a circle around this altar. And they wore all white, and they baptized for the dead. And they believed that they were the heirs of the Melchizedek priesthood. Now, Peter Whitmer, who was the senior, who was the father of David Whitmer. David Whitmer was one of the 3 Book of Mormon witnesses. Peter Whitmer grew up 3 miles from this commune.
Uh-huh.
And some say that he was a novice, or he wanted to become a member of this commune at one time. So he had a relationship with this commune, the Zionitic Brotherhood. So we know the following, that the Book of Mormon was translated mostly in Harmony, Pennsylvania, in one of the homes of Peter Whitmer, because he owned 3 or 4 different homes.
Okay.
We know that. We also know the following, that David Whitmer was one of the witnesses to the Book of Mormon. That was the son of Peter Sr. Of all the 11 witnesses to the Book of Mormon, 8 of them were either Whitmers or related to the Whitmers by marriage. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So the Zionitic Brotherhood, their purpose of coming to America was to build the city of New Jerusalem on the American continent. They believed that that was their divine mandate. Now, the monks of the Brotherhood, they spoke 3 languages. They spoke German, which was their native tongue. They also spoke Latin, because they were monks. They spoke and wrote in Latin. And, of course, they also spoke some English, because they had to communicate with their neighbors. So when they did write in Latin, they used a Latin shorthand called Tyronian Latin. It was invented by a Roman a long time ago named Tyro. So in Tyronian Latin, every symbol equals one word. So Tyro took all the Latin letters, he took all the Greek letters, and he took all the hieratic Egyptian symbols, each symbol meaning one word, each letter meaning one word, and formulated his Latin shorthand, which became known as Tyronian Latin. Now, when Joseph Smith wanted to get the Book of Mormon published, he had a farmer, a neighbor named Martin Harris financed the publishing of the Book of Mormon. And Martin Harris said, well, I don't want to mortgage my farm if this is unless this is real. And so just let me see the gold plates so I know this is real. Well, at that time, Joseph Smith didn't show Martin Harris the gold plates, but he wrote down characters from the gold plates. And he, on a piece of paper, and he gave it to Martin Harris, and he said, take this to New York City, give it to a learned man who's learned in languages, and show it to him. You remember the story?
Yeah.
So this is what he does. And so the church has a photocopy of that particular document, which has the characters from the gold plates. Now, if you take those characters on the gold plates, it's called the Anton document, because Martin Harris showed it to a man named Charles Anton to get his opinion on it. So if you take those characters on the Anton, Anthon document, and if you compare those characters to Tyronian Latin shorthand that these monks used, it's the same.
Okay.
It's the same. So these characters on the gold plates were actually Tyronian Latin. Again, most of which is based upon hieratic Egyptian characters. Because Tyro, of course, there's about 3,000 characters, and he knew that Latin and Greek symbols, he needed more symbols, so he used Egyptian symbols, because he ran out of symbols. So he had to use mostly Egyptian symbols for his shorthand, his Latin shorthand. So that's some evidence that ties in the Book of Mormon to the Zionistic Brotherhood. Here's more evidence. More evidence is that in the original Book of Mormon, Mary is called the Mother of God. Now, in later editions, Joseph Smith adds the following words: Mary is the mother of the Son of God. Okay? Joseph Smith adds that. In the original Book of Mormon, 1829 Book of Mormon, Mary is called the Mother of God. It doesn't say the Mother of the Son of God. It says Mary is called the Mother of God. Now, Joseph Smith, everyone around Joseph Smith were Protestants. There were Lutherans, there were Methodists, there were Quakers, there were Presbyterians, there were Baptists. None of those churches called Mary the Mother of God. But the Zionistic Brotherhood, who were Rosicrucian monks, referred to Mary as the Mother of God. You see?
Yeah.
Also, yeah. So if you go through the Book of Mormon, and I'll do something about this later, you will find doctrines and phrases that are very similar to the writings of the Zionistic Brotherhood, or these group of Rosicrucian monks. Now, Mary Whitmer, who was the wife of Peter Whitmer Sr. and the mother of David Whitmer, one of the three witnesses of the Book of Mormon, testified that the angel Moroni appeared to her before the Book of Mormon was fully translated, appeared to her in her barn at the Whitmer farm in Batavia, New York, and showed her the gold plates. and she described the angel Moroni as a man of about age 60 to 65, portly, wearing a brown suit. Now, David Whitmer later testified that he took Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith from his father's farm in Harmony, Pennsylvania. He was going to take them and bring them back to Palmyra, New York. As they were on the road towards Palmyra, there was an old man, about 60, 65, in a brown suit with an old 1812 Army knapsack on the road. And David Whitmer stops, woes his horses, and said, "Good man, do you need a ride? I can give you a ride. We have room." And the man says, "No, that's fine. I'm going to Cumorah." And so David Whitmer says, "All right." So he keeps on going. And David Whitmer says to Joseph Smith, "Where's Cumorah?" Because remember, the Book of Mormon has not been published yet. David Whitmer has never heard the word Cumorah before. And Joseph Smith says, "You know who that old man was?" And David Whitmer says, "No." And Joseph Smith says, "That was Moroni."
Huh.
So it's my feeling that was Joseph Smith a total fraud? I'm kind of leaning towards Joseph Smith was a front man for something bigger.
Okay.
I'm coming to the belief that Joseph Smith was appointed or used by another group of men for a purpose. And I think the Zionistic Brotherhood, which Peter Whitmer Sr. apparently was once a member of, even though I haven't been able to document that yet, but he grew up 3 miles from their commune in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, where they baptized for the dead, where they had a round temple with an altar in the middle, where they wore all white. Can you see some connections here with Mormonism?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm definitely Joseph Smith, especially in his later life, did a lot of immoral things, and he did a lot of dishonest, immoral, unethical things in his life. He did some noble things too, but he did a lot of immoral and unethical things, which convinced his best friends that he was a fallen prophet. I mean, Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, Martin Harris, Sidney Rigdon, half of the original Mormon apostles, all concluded that Joseph Smith was an adulterer, a liar, a thief, and a fallen prophet.
Right.
They all came to that conclusion. So, could Joseph Smith been a total, absolute fraud who just invented the Book of Mormon as a way to make money, with Oliver Cowdery? Sure, that's possible. But however, at this point in my life, I'm coming to believe more and more that he had some connection with the Zionistic Brotherhood, that the angel Moroni actually did exist and was a monk who belonged to the Zionistic Brotherhood, or at least was a go-between, you might say. Many scholars believe that the Rosicrucians founded the Order of Freemasonry in England, and that was founded by William Smith, who was Joseph Smith was a direct ancestor of that man. So I'm kind of thinking that my line of thinking right now is that the Zionistic Brotherhood, you look at them and for the true origins of the Book of Mormon and Mormonism. So that's where I am now. That may change tomorrow, but from the research I have right now, that's how it's looking to me. So
Okay.
that's the best answer I can give.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe that all anti-Mormon literature and YouTube videos are accurate and reliable?
No, I don't. Anti-Mormon literature, including pamphlets, books, films, YouTube videos, can go from very bad and very inaccurate to very good and very accurate, and everything in between.
Fair enough.
Some anti-Mormons are atheistic con men and liars who just pretend to be Christians in order to make money from the evangelicals. Others are Christians who will use lies or exaggeration. Others are Christians who won't use any lie or any exaggeration.
Uh-huh.
There is some good, honest anti-Mormon videos out there, YouTube videos by Sean McCready, by Bill McKeever of Mormonism Research Ministry, by Lee Baker, who was a former Mormon bishop. Lee Baker, a former Mormon bishop. His videos are totally honest and accurate. His book is accurate. You'll find everything from very bad to very good, and everything in between.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, where can a seeker of truth find Letter to a CES Director?
Okay. We're talking about anti-Mormon information. The best, there is some anti-Mormon stuff you can find that is totally, absolutely accurate, truthful, totally factual, with no exaggeration. And I can give you one example. That would be a Letter to a CES Director by Jeremy Runnels. And you can find that on the internet. Jeremy Runnels is a former Mormon. He was a former Mormon missionary. He went to New York City on a deaf mission. He was a deaf missionary. And he wrote a letter to a CES director. Basically, CES stands for Church Educational System. It means that Institute of Religion Director. Those remember, Mormon bishops are not trained in Mormon history or theology, but Institute teachers and directors are trained in Mormon theology and Mormon history. So Jeremy Runnels was a former Mormon missionary. His brother, I think, had come along and found some anti-Mormon stuff on the internet, had asked Jeremy to help him answer it. Jeremy didn't have the answers to a lot of it, so he started corresponding with this institute director of the church educational system, who was supposed to have the answers. And so they finally came, and Jeremy decided to send this institute director one last letter, of all the evidence against the Book of Mormon being history, against the first vision, against, the Book of Abraham being a translation of Egyptian papyrus, and just lays it out one after another. And Jeremy giving the institute director the opportunity to respond. The institute director, the CES director, never wrote back after that.
Huh.
Because he didn't have any answers. Because there are none. So then Jeremy resigned from the church after that point. So this is the most accurate, quote unquote, anti-Mormon literature I can find anywhere. And you can find that at the following address: www.cesletter.com.
Okay.
www.cesletter.com. So if you want to see the evidence against the church being what it claims to be, in a nutshell, in one setting, and that evidence is factual, without lies or half-truth or exaggeration, that's where you go. www.cesletter.com by Jeremy Runnels.
Okay.
Read that.
Is it CES?
If you want to know the truth.
CESletter.com or CESdirector.com?
No, it's the name of the publication is Letter to a CES Director, but to get there on the internet, you go to www.cesletter.com.
Oh, okay, just making sure. All right.
Yeah. And it's in PDF format.
Okay.
But it's all there. You can, if you want to see what the evidence is against the church, it's all right there. You don't have to go anywhere but there. And it is factual and accurate. Not all anti-Mormon literature is. Some of it's quite bad. But Letter to a CS Director is accurate.
Okay. Darrick, some Mormons claim that everybody who leaves the church is either gay or an adulterer or a pedophile or couldn't keep the word of wisdom, and that he or she just wanted to commit sins and smoke and drink, but they needed to leave the church. So they are using these anti Mormon claims against the church as just their excuse to commit all sorts of evil sins. Is this true?
That's not true. No, it's not true. In fact, there are lots of, there's ex-Mormon organizations like the ex-Mormon Foundation, and you'll find that most ex-Mormons today were active, conservative, true believing Mormons who served missions, who were in bishoprics, Relief Society presidencies. They were active for decades and decades. You can read their stories at Recovery for Mormon website at www.exmormon.org. There's hundreds of stories you could read there, why people left the church, and you'll find in, probably 95% of the cases, you will find that these people left the church not because they smoked or drank, or not because they were gay or wanted to be gay or anything like that. They left the church because they came across some fact that they couldn't deal with, like the fact that Joseph Smith, married his own foster daughters and had sex with them in secret and stole their inheritance money, which is true. Or another fact that Joseph Smith would send men on missions to England. While the men were in England, telling people Joseph Smith was a true prophet, he would seduce their wives and secretly marry their wives, which is also true. So they find out these facts from friends or from the internet, usually the internet, but in other ways. And then they start doing their own research usually on the internet. They find out these facts, and they find out these facts are true, unfortunately, and they lose their testimony, and then they resign from the church. That's how it usually happens.
Okay.
It's not because they want to sin. For example, my roommate Larry committed adultery against his wife many times, and he was still an active member of the church. He committed fornication of various sorts with dozens and dozens and dozens of active Mormon women and girls that I know about personally. And he was still an active member of the church. So I know other men who've committed adultery in the church and keep it a secret. They don't. I don't know of anyone who says, I think I want to commit adultery, but I can't do that as an active Mormon. So let me see here.
Right.
I need to. Yeah, I'll just resign from the church, and so I can commit adultery. No, it doesn't happen that way.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Don't happen that way, guy.
Okay.
So there's your answer. 95% of the cases, people leave the church not because of personal sin.
Okay. Darrick, would you like to discuss further the subject of Joseph Smith's sexual behaviors in regards to polygamy?
Just briefly, and then I'll refer to people to a video that you and I made that will give them more information if they want to see more information. These are the facts we know about Joseph Smith. These are the facts. In 1835, he had a nanny got a nanny for his children, a beautiful 16-year-old girl named Fanny Alger. She, according to what Emma Smith told Thomas B. Marsh, who was a Mormon apostle at the time, she caught Joseph Smith having sex with Fanny Alger in the 1835. This is 1834 maybe. This is many years before Joseph Smith claimed that God told him to practice plural marriage. Fanny Alger left the Smith home pregnant. She later bore a child that she named Orison Smith. Now, did she marry a guy named Smith? No. It was an illegitimate child that she named Orison Smith. We know that happened. She was asked by her brother years later, did you ever have an affair with Joseph Smith? Her reply was that I'm not going to discuss that with you. Now, I don't know about you, but if someone accused me of adultery, and I didn't commit adultery, I'd say, hell no, that wasn't the truth.
Oh, yeah.
But she just said, I'm not going to discuss that. So we know another thing. We know that Joseph Smith had sex with lots of women in Nauvoo. Lots and lots of women. Now, the church says this was justified because God commanded him to do so. What else is he going to do? Joseph Smith told some of these girls that an angel with a flaming sword appeared to him and commanded him to take additional wives, or he was going to be killed, presumably with the flaming sword. So he told many women and girls this. We know that to be a fact. 11 of the 34 wives of Joseph Smith were married to other men. That's confirmed on the church's own website, Ancestry.com. That's confirmed. That's another fact. Did these men know about that their wives were having sexual liaisons with Joseph Smith? There's no evidence that they knew. There's no evidence that they knew. In fact, he would tell these girls to tell no one that he was marrying them. Not their husbands, not their mothers, not their whatever. We know that much. And I could reveal more, but instead of doing that, I encourage all the listeners to go to watch our other video, which is called Mormons and Sex. And you'll find out more about that subject there. So go to our other video. You can go to the YouTube search engine and type in Mormons and Sex, and you'll see our video come up. And I encourage all the listeners to, after you listen to this video, to watch that video.
Okay. Since we're on that subject, in the YouTube video called Mormons and Sex, you made a number of claims. I know this because I'm the one who created that YouTube video for you, based upon a script you gave me. Now, some of the listeners claim that the video is inaccurate on a number of points. For example, the video claims that the church operated homes for unwed Mormon teen girls and pressured these girls to give up their children to good Mormon couples who could not have children, also telling the girls to lie to their friends about their pregnancies, instructing the girls to tell their friends that they were merely living with relatives for a year. Do you have any evidence for that?
I'll tell you where I got my information. I dated a girl named Robin Nelson from Tacoma, Washington, who had 3 children. She told me she got pregnant by an active Mormon man who was 20 years old named Richard when she was 15. She was told her mother she was pregnant. Pregnant told the bishop. Her mother told the bishop. Bishop told her to go to a home that was in Tumwater, Washington. This was in 1974. She went to a home, a large house. She was driven to a large house in Tumwater, Washington. She lived in Tacoma. Tumwater is near Olympia, which is about 50 miles away, approximately, maybe 40 miles. She went to a large home. She said there was many more pregnant Mormon girls there. They were from the states of Washington and Oregon. And the home was run by LDS Social Services, which was later called LDS Family Services. She was told there to tell her friends at church and at school that she was going to live with relatives for a year. She was told to tell no one that she was pregnant, just her family, nobody else. All her friends at church, do not tell them you're pregnant. Tell them you're going to go live with relatives. So she said, okay. She's 15 years old. So she goes to this home for 3 hours a day. They have high school class. For 1 or 2 hours a day, they have a child rearing class, homemaking class. And for 1 hour a day, every day, they had a gospel doctrine class every single day. She said they used to have to do a chant every day. A chant. Mormon girls don't do things with guys before marriage. Mormon girls are good. Mormon girls are pure. Mormon girls don't blah blah blah. basically, Mormon girls don't have sex before marriage. They would chant this. So anyway, she's telling me that while she's there, another pregnant girl came in, who also got pregnant by Richard, who was an active LDS man at the time in the early 70s in the Tacoma, Washington area. So she said about 3 weeks before she was going to deliver her child, the director there of the house had her mother come in and said, the Lord wants you to give up your child to an active Mormon couple who can't have children, so that, this would be the best thing. You'll give her a good education, and we think we know this would be the best thing for you and your child. Well, Robin didn't want to give up her kid, so she got very upset, and basically the director, they had the bishop call her up. He called the bishop on the phone and said, the church, the brethren, this is what the Lord basically wants you to do. This is what we counsel you to do. This is what the church counsels you to do. Counsel means command. We're ordering you to do this. Will you obey the Lord in this? And her mother was super devout Mormon, and she said, yes, we're gonna obey the Lord. So her child, which was a girl, was taken from her soon after she delivered and given to this couple that she never met. And I asked Robin, well, how much money were you given for your child? And she looked at me and she says, what are you talking about? And I said, well, in adoptions, the mother is given money for the child. Really? What? Robin and her mother got not a penny for this. So do I know that LES Social Services sold the child to this Mormon couple? I don't know that. I'm saying that's a possibility, that they charged this Mormon couple many thousands of dollars and didn't give a dime to Robin or her mother. Didn't give a dime to Robin, and that was Robin's flesh and blood. So over the years, I have probably met 5 other LDS women who told me very similar stories. That when they were teen girls, they were raped. They said raped by an active Mormon boy or man. They got pregnant. The bishop told them to go to this home. They were told, tell their friends that they're going to live with relatives for the same exact thing as what Robin Nelson told me. I met 5 different women who told me the same story. All these women didn't know each other. They lived in different locations. So this would have taken place in the 1970s, early 1980s. Does the church still do this today? I have no idea.
Okay.
But I know at one time, this is what the church did. They operated homes for these unwed Mormon girls. They took their children, either gave them or sold them to active Mormons who could not have children. Girls were not given a dime, nor were the girls really given any legal counsels. So that's where I got my information. Do I have a document with the church letterhead that explains all this? No, I don't. That's all the information I have.
Okay. The next question. The YouTube video Mormons and Sex also claims that a study was conducted at Brigham Young University that found that Mormons had sex before marriage in the same amounts as did the general white American population. However, the video did not cite a reference for that. Where did you get the information from?
I got the information from BYU's own website.
Okay.
www.byu.edu.
Okay.
So I'll even quote from it. So if anyone wants to check up on this, go to www.byu.edu. Then once you get to the BYU website, type in the little search box, special collections. Okay, once you type in that, then the L. Tom Perry Special Collections website will come up. Type in the following in the search box, quote, Mormon sex survey, close quote. I'll say it again, quote, Mormon sex survey, close quote. The following web page will come up. It will say Mormon sex survey / Joseph Glenn, Glenn. Let me read that. Quote, now I'm reading from the church BYU's own website. Quote, report by BYU student Joseph Glenn, who collected oral stories and information from Glade Hunsaker. Okay, so Joseph Glenn was a BYU student in 1981 who was collecting oral history stories at Brigham Young University. You know, things he had heard. He wanted to collect them for an oral history project. He was told the following story by Glade Hunsaker, Glade, last name Hunsaker, Hunsaker. Now, who is Glade Hunsaker? Glade Hunsaker was a BYU English professor for 30 years. He also taught at the religion classes for 2 years at BYU. Okay, he retired from BYU. He moved to Virginia, and at the present time, he is a volunteer professor at Southern Virginia University, which is a Mormon-owned school. It's not owned by the church, but Mormons own the school. Okay, now I'm going to quote from the BYU website. Remember, this is what Glade Hunsaker, a BYU professor, told BYU student Joseph Glenn. Okay, quote, according to the story, a group of Mormon women start a newspaper to provide a view of life for modern Mormon women. They have a non-Mormon group conduct a survey to determine the virtue of Mormon young adults and are shocked to learn that their chastity is no better than the world's norm. The Mormon church buys the paper to cover it up. Close quote. Okay, I just quoted from BYU's own website. According to Glade Hunsaker, a BYU religion and English professor, okay, a group of female Mormon women at BYU start a magazine at BYU, independent magazine. They have a non-Mormon group conduct a sex survey. They find out that the percentage of Mormon men and women at BYU who've had sex before marriage is the same as what is normal for white Americans. There's no difference. So, according to Glade Hunsaker, the Mormon Church buys up this study in order so it cannot be published, so it doesn't embarrass the church. That's from the BYU's own website. That's where I got my information on this.
Okay. And is it possible that Glade Hunsaker is lying about this study?
Okay. Again, anything is possible, but you have to ask yourself, Glade Hunsaker, who told this story in 1981 to Joseph Glenn. Glade Hunsaker taught English at BYU for 30 years. He taught in the College of Religious Instruction as a religion instructor from 1982 to 1984. So Glade Hunsaker is not a bitter ex-Mormon looking to embarrass the church. He is a faithful member of the church, a BYU professor in 1981. At the time, he tells the story to BYU student Joseph Glenn. And then he teaches for another 12 years at BYU after this. He then retires. He then moves to Virginia, and now he's a volunteer professor at another Mormon college, Southern Virginia University.
Huh.
So we have to ask yourself, why would Glade Hunsaker, who's obviously all this time is an active member of the church, why would he invent this story to embarrass the church? Is he making money from it? No. Is he a bitter ex-Mormon? No. Why? Maybe it's the truth. Now, has the church ever used money to cover up negative publicity about the church? It has. I'll give you another example. There was a black editor in Ghana, in Accra, Ghana, in West Africa, who had a newspaper called the Ghanaian Chronicle. He started publishing editorials about how the church used to teach that black people were the cursed descendants of Cain, which is all true. And he quoted church leaders that Negroes were the cursed and fair children of Cain, and mark of Cain was a black skin, flat nose, and kinky hair. Anyway, the church got wind of this, of course. So a group of Mormons got together, Mormon men, and they went over to Accra, Ghana, and they bought the newspaper, the Ghanaian Chronicle. And they fired the editor who was writing these exposés, fired him. Also in the early 1980s, there was a Mormon named Mark Hoffman who claimed that he was discovering all these old Mormon documents. And some of the documents made Joseph Smith and Brigham Young look very bad. And the church secretly bought these documents in order to hide them so they couldn't be published. You see a pattern here, Zach?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and all this, and when I'm talking to you about the Mark Hoffman story, you can just Google Mark Hoffman, or you can Google Salamander Letter, and you can read all about it. In fact, there's been 6 books published about the Mark Hoffman. Mark Hoffman was forging these documents. These weren't real documents. He was forging them, making Joseph Smith and Brigham Young look bad. He would say, he would present them to the church. He would meet with Gordon B. Hinckley personally in Gordon B. Hinckley's office. Gordon B. Hinckley was the president of the church for many years. And Gordon B. Hinckley would write in big, thick checks and take these damaging documents and put them in the First Presidency vault, never again to see the light of day. Well, Mark Hoffman had a good thing going. He was making a lot of money from the church, from others, selling these bogus documents, until a Mormon bishop named Steve Christensen, who knew a lot about Mormon history, saw some discrepancies in the documents, and basically confronted Mark Hoffman and said, unless you repent and confess, I'm gonna tell on you. And so Mark Hoffman made a pipe bomb and killed Bishop Steve Christensen with a pipe bomb. Killed him outside his office one morning. And then Mark Hoffman went and killed a second person who had nothing to do with the documents in order to throw police off his trail. Then Mark Hoffman created a third pipe bomb that he was going to leave for a third person to further throw off police, but he dropped the bomb and it blew up and it injured him, but he survived. But police did a thorough investigation, found out he was making forgeries. Hoffman confessed to forgery and murder. And then books were written, and the best book you can read about the Mark Hoffman affair is called The Mormon Murders by Neifeh and Smith, Neifeh and Smith, The Mormon Murders. That's the best book you can get on the subject. And you can get that book on Amazon.com. You could go on Google and just type in the name Mark Hoffman and Salamander Letter, and you can read all about it. That's a fully documented with court documents how the church spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy damaging publications to hide them so they wouldn't be published. So that the church has a long history of doing that.
Okay. Darrick, there's a lot of buzz on the internet on how the church is losing members left and right. Is this true?
It's absolutely true. Some people refer to it as the Google problem. Mm-hmm. It started about the year 2000 when Google became very popular. The church used to have what is called a membership records office that used to be on one of the floors of the church office building in Salt Lake City. and just that handles they handle resignations. The church had to buy a 3-story building 5 blocks away in downtown Salt Lake, and just to house that department, membership records office, because so many people were resigning from the church. I would say at least 200,000 people a year are now resigning from the church because Mormons are finding anti-Mormon claims on the internet. Before, back in the late 70s, early 1980s, when I was an active member, if you wanted to read anti-Mormon literature, you either had to be a missionary and someone would hand you at a door, or you had to walk into a Christian bookstore and buy an anti-Mormon book. Today, all you got to do is type in Mormonism on Google, and you'll half the websites you'll find are anti-Mormon.
Right.
So it's much easier today because anti-Mormonism is coming over through the internet. So a lot more Mormons are finding out facts. Joseph Smith, about Brigham Young, about the Book of Abraham, about the Book of Mormon, about church history. They're finding a lot of disturbing and unnerving facts and evidence on the internet, right in their own home. And Mormons they go to their bishop and they say, "What about this?" The bishop says, "Don't worry about it. Just pay your tithing, attend your meetings, and you'll be blessed." What about that? Look, don't bring this up again, or something bad is going to happen to you. Oh, well, what are you talking about? Look, shut your mouth, keep quiet, don't ask questions, or you're going to be excommunicated.
Yeah.
This is how bishops handle it. And so, for some people that works, but for a lot of people that doesn't work, because they have questions, and instead of getting answers, they're getting threats, or they're being told, "Well, if you were really living the gospel, you wouldn't have any questions. So you must be a wicked person. You must be an adulterer. You must be gay. You must be bi. You must be a child molester. You must be incestuous. You must have some horrible sin that you're not confessing to me. That's why you have questions." This is how Mormon bishops handle these things.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't work for most of these people. They have anti-Mormon questions. They go to the church for answers. Instead of getting answers, they're told to keep their mouth shut, or else.
Right.
And so they're resigning from the church by droves. In fact, Elder Marlin Jensen, Marlin Jensen, Jensen, Elder Marlin Jensen, gave a talk at a fireside where he told a bunch of people, I think they're mission presidents, I'm not sure, that the church is going through an apostasy, that the church is, but people are apostatizing from the church to the extent it's almost like the Kirkland apostasy. That's back in Kirkland, Ohio, when Joseph Smith started a bank without a bank charter, and had a lot of Mormons invest all their savings in this bank, this phony bank, and then the bank goes under, and then half the members leave the church at that point.
Uh-huh.
And so you just want to type in, quote, Elder Marlin Jensen, close quote, on Google, and you'll find that quote, that he says that the church is going through a crisis right now. So many people are leaving. So many are resigning. Now, the church will never publish how many people are resigning. They'll only publish the good news. The church does not publish the bad news. But some things leak out. They get things that are coming out that the church had to buy a huge 3-story brick building in Salt Lake City just to house the membership records office because so many people are resigning.
Huh.
So it's real. The church is really in a crisis right now. The church in Europe is going downhill. They're losing members left and right. The church in the United States is not growing, but it's not really losing too much, but it's not growing at all. because even if you get 100,000 people who are baptized, you got 100,000 people who are resigning. So it's kind of breaking even in North America. In Europe, it's going downhill fast. The church is really only growing in places where people don't have internet access, like in Africa, where most people have no access to the internet. It's growing, still growing strong. And among the poor in Latin America who don't have internet access, it's still growing. But every place where the church where there's people have internet access, easy internet access, the church is either breaking even or in a free fall.
Okay, so finally, do you have any suggestions for Mormons who have left the church or who are thinking of leaving the church?
I do have suggestions. I have a list of alternate spiritual paths that they might be interested in. Most Mormons haven't really studied religion very much, so they only know a few religions, like some Protestant religions, maybe Buddhism, and Islam. And they believe me when I tell you there are thousands of spiritual paths, and I include about 10 of them, discuss them a little bit as alternatives. Most Mormons who leave the church leave religion altogether. That's unfortunate, but that's the truth. A lot of them join the Unitarian Universalist Church, which is basically an agnostic church. Anyway, I give advice for ex-Mormons and Mormons thinking of leaving the church. A lot of people find that when they lose faith in the church, they get very depressed, and their family shuns them. Their believing Mormon family and friends shun them. A lot of people want support groups. I put a list on my website of ex-Mormon support groups so they can find other ex-Mormons. I give a list of ex-Mormons forums so they can go on the internet and talk to other people who are also doubting or have left the church or have lost faith. So they get on a forum so they don't feel that they're alone and going through this alone. To the ex-Mormons and the doubting Mormons who are listening to this, millions of people have gone through what you're going through. And the church claims 15 million members. That's not true. Most people today, there are more ex-Mormons and inactive Mormons than there are Mormons. So millions of people have gone what you're going through now. Millions more will in the future. There's a lot of us around. Go to my website and click on my advice to ex-Mormons and doubting Mormons, and you'll find a lot of resources for you there. So just go to my website, and we'll have that up on the screen. My website is daheshism.webs.com. HTTP Daheshism, DAHESHISM, daheshism.webs.com. You'll find Introduction to Dr. Dahesh and Daheshism there. You'll find my online booklet, Falling into the Sun, Why I Left the Mormon Church and Became a Daheshist. And you'll also find my advice to ex-Mormons and doubting Mormons, which contain lists of ex-Mormon organizations, ex-Mormon forums, doubting Mormon forums that you can go on, as well as a list of some spiritual path that ex-Mormons might be interested in. And you'll also find my story there, Falling into the Sun, Why I Left the Mormon Church and Became a Daheshist. I talk about a lot of paranormal occurrences that I've had in the past. Please read that. I think you really like it. And you'll find links to other things that might prove to be helpful to you. So just remember that website, daheshism.webs.com. And Zach, make sure to put up that link at the end of this video.
Okay,
will
do.
As soon as we get done here, and basically I just want to say that to those who are doubting, there is light at the end of the tunnel. That if you do lose your faith in the church, there's no reason to lose faith in God, because God does live. Jesus is the Son of God, and there are true prophets out there. I follow one. Please don't judge it till you look into it. To the faithful Mormons out there, no, I'm not gay. I'm not bi. I'm not an adulterer. I'm not a fornicator. No, I didn't quit. I was never excommunicated. I resigned. No, I didn't resign from the church because I wanted to sin. Read my story. That's all I ask you. I can't force you to do that, but please don't judge me falsely, because that makes you a false accuser. Doesn't make me an adulterer. It makes you a false accuser.
Right.
Just go to my website, and you'll get a lot of good information that way.
Okay. And so you've written an online book titled "Falling into the Sun: Why I Left the Mormon Church and Became a Daheshist." I believe you've already said the website, but if you want to say that one more time while I put up the link for that, how can our listeners find that book online?
All right, yeah, there's a link to that book on the website, and my website there's no www in front of it. It's HTTP, and then colon / and it's Daheshism, DAHESHISM, Daheshism.webs.com. And if you go to that website, there are links there to everything else we discussed, including the letter to a CES director. There's links to everything there. You'll find everything there that we discussed here tonight.
Okay, great. Are you planning to do any more YouTube videos that expose the truth about Mormonism in the future?
I am. I'm planning to do something on the curse of Cain soon. The church taught for 130 years that black people were the cursed children of Cain, that a black skin, kinky hair, flat nose was the mark of Cain. That was always presented as a doctrine of the church. Now the church, again, is trying to rewrite history, trying to cover that up. Many younger Mormons are told that the church never taught that was just some folklore that, a few members here and there believed. Not the truth, Zach. The church is rewriting its history, trying to cover up embarrassing things in its history. It needs to be exposed, and we're going to do that in a website, not a website, but a YouTube video. We're going to tackle that cover up very soon. I can assure you.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you, Darrick, for the interview. If any of our listeners want to read Darrick's book, Falling into the Sun, then please go to the following website, http daheshism.webs.com. We'll put that web address up visually for you in case you'd like to read the book. The book is completely free online. The web address again is daheshism.webs.com. That's DAHESHISM.webs.com. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out Darrick's other YouTube videos, which would be Mormons and Sex, also Mormonism Exposed 101, Mitt Romney, and the Mormon Curse on Black People. Please leave your comments in the comment area below. We'd love to read them. Good night and go in peace.